Hello, my name is Nicholas Ferranda, and I'm the Director of Student Disability Services here at the New School. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my talk about student disability services and your rights and responsibilities relating to students with disabilities and the services that we provide at the New School. I've been here since the beginning of 2017, coming from Mount Ida College and from Boston University before that. I've been in disability services for over 13 years. And I'm very happy to be here and excited to talk to you about finding ways where we can improve the success of our students with disabilities here at the New School. We've had significant numbers of students with disabilities increase over the course of time in the past 5 to 10 years as the Americans with Disabilities Act, as amended, has ramped up and become fully functional and integrated into the campus life. And so we have to be able to do a number of different things with these students. Our office specifically provides academic and housing accommodations and both physical and electronic campus accessibility. It is our goal to provide accommodations which will grant them equal access to the classroom and residential environments. The accommodations that we provide need to be what is considered reasonable. We are not allowed to alter any fundamental requirements of a class or a program. The standards of academic integrity are not waived or lowered, and the only accommodations provided to students should be the ones that Student Disability Services, or for short SDS, approve. If you receive a request from a student for accommodations that are not listed on the student's academic adjustment notice, please reach out to me to confer and see if that is an accommodation that is reasonable. I'd like to take a moment to talk to you about Student Disability Services accommodation process. This is the way that students qualify for academic adjustment notices and for attendance and disability memos. So, the first step for a student is they are required to identify themselves to our office as a student with a disability. If they do not identify themselves as a student with a disability to our office, they are technically not considered a student with a disability legally, which means that they are to be treated as every other student. So there are no special standards, there are no accommodations that are supposed to be provided. They are expected to do all of the work without any accommodations that every other student is expected to complete. So when a student does take the step to register with themselves with us, what they will do is they'll go onto our website and they will complete the self-identification form, which is on the upper right. The button is on the upper right portion of our homepage. They're going to complete that form. We will send them a canned response talking to them about the next processes, which include scheduling appointments to meet with me, to discuss the nature of their disability, how their disability is functionally limiting them, talking about previous accommodations that they may have received in high school or at their previous college, and request accommodations that they feel will enable them to be as successful as they can be at the New School. They are also required to provide documentation from a licensed medical professional. Each kind of disability has slightly different kinds of documentation that are necessary. Students with learning disabilities are going to provide us with psychoeducational testing. Students with psychological psychiatric disabilities are going to provide us with clinical summaries from their therapist, their psychiatrist, or psychologist. Students with physical or medical disabilities are going to provide information, documentation from their specialists. Once the student has completed all of their required actions, Student Disability Service will review the documentation, they will review the meeting notes, and they will make the determination of what accommodations are reasonable and appropriate to provide the student at the New School. We will then create an academic adjustment notice and or an attendance and disability memo. We will email a student a copy of those letters in PDF form. It is then the student's responsibility to forward those letters to whichever professors that they want to utilize their accommodations with. And they are also expected to CC Student Disability Services in that email so that we have record of the letter being distributed. For students utilizing attendance and disability memos, we also expect them to request a meeting with the professor to talk about the limits of the attendance and flexibility for that particular class. And we also want professors to follow up with that student after that meeting with an email to talk about exactly what that flexibility is so that the student and the professor are on the same page so that there's no way for miscommunication to confuse the situation. And that way we would avoid having a sticky situation later on in relation to how much time a student has missed and what grade is possible or not possible. Some of the most common accommodations that a professor might see include the attendance and disability memo. We also provide students options of note-taking services or audio taping of the class or the use of a LiveScribe Smart Pen, which is an audio recording device mated with a pen and a specialized notebook. The student is usually entitled to utilize one of those. They are considered equivalent accommodations, so they will receive the option to use one of those. Students can receive extra time on exams. Students can take their exams in our testing center in the University Center on the 4th floor. Students may be allowed to utilize a word processor or a computer to type essay-based exams. Some students may require textbooks in alternate format, which means getting them a digital copy of the text that you require. Students may also need captioning of any video content that is presented in class or for homework. We also have students that require transcription services. And in that case, we contract a company to come in to your class and to type meaning for meaning what is being said in the class. That student then reads what's being said on a computer screen so that they're able to access the course content in the way that they can. Occasionally, we have students who are coming back from significant disabilities and may need to take fewer classes than is considered full-time, but also need to maintain their full-time status in order to preserve financial aid and access to housing. And so we have an accommodation called a reduced course load that is designed to be a semester or two, and it allows the student to get back on track, build on their success so that they can continue forward and graduate. Finally, some students may come in with service animals who are trained to provide a specific task or function to the student. Please keep in mind that this is different than an emotional support animal. Emotional support animals are not permitted in the classroom. Service animals are. However, with a service animal, you're only allowed to ask 2 questions. First question is this animal a service animal designed to help with a disability? And the second question is, what specific task is this animal trained to perform? You are entitled to ask these questions. However, what I would recommend is that you reach out to Student Disability Services and let us know that there's an animal in the class and that you would like us to follow up with the student, provide the student's name to us so that we can reach out and we can have that conversation on our own time in a way that is less confrontational potentially, and again, take that off your plate and just allow you to consider focusing on your educational environment. Every once in a while, Student Disability Services will meet with a student who has been diagnosed with anxiety, mostly social anxiety, and asks to be exempted from having to participate in class or from presenting in the front of the class as part of a project, because this will trigger their symptoms of their disability. And so we'll remind you that your course is your course. Your standards of expectation for educational achievement are what they are. Your expectations are your expectations. Accommodations should not undermine these fundamental requirements. However, we would like you to think about what are the goals that you're trying to accomplish with this particular assignment. Does the person have to physically present in front of the class? If the student presented to you outside of class, would that meet the same expectation? If the student presented to a smaller group of students, would it meet the same fundamental requirements? If the student video recorded themselves presenting and then played the tape of the presentation to the class, would that meet the fundamental requirements of what you're trying to achieve with that assignment? So again, what is your definition of participation? What are the learning objectives of that participation? And might there possibly be another way to assess the student in an equal way that will allow them to demonstrate that they have competency and mastery of whatever it is that you are assessing? There are also unreasonable accommodation requests, and we do see them. And most of the time, they are related to the differences between the laws in K-12 versus the laws of higher education. And so some of the requests that you're not going to see include an accommodation of a required additional tutoring from an instructor or physical assistance from the instructor, having unlimited test time to complete an exam, having extended time on clinical or practical exams, having cheat sheets or note cards for exams, using a calculator with more than 4 function capability, or as I previously discussed, having an emotional support animal in class. There are a few frequently asked questions that I'd like to address. One of the most common questions from faculty and staff revolves around that faculty or staff member's suspicion that a student may have a disability. And they want to know what they can do or what can they ask in order to get that student help. As I mentioned before, you are not legally allowed to come straight out and ask a student if they have a disability. However, you can focus on what you observe. So if you suspect that the student may have a disability and you would like to see if they might benefit from some help, you can ask to have a conversation with that student and you can focus on whatever it is that you're observing. I've seen that it's taken you longer to complete our exams and you seem to be running out of time and you've been doing it for the entire semester. Is this a problem that you've had previously in other classes, in high school, etc.? You can talk about what you observe and you can talk around a disability. If they disclose to you that, oh, yes, I had extra time in high school because I have a disability, then you could say, great, I would like to accommodate you and work with you. I just need you to go and contact Student Disability Services. They can get you set up, and then you can get me an accommodation notice, and we can provide you with the accommodations that you need to be successful. If a student is disruptive in class, you can call them out on the behavior of disruption. I noticed that you're calling out, or that every once in a while you blurt something out without raising your hand. Is this a problem that you've had before? Is there anything that I can do to help you with that? What did you do in the past to help prevent this from happening on a regular basis? Again, just asking history, asking context. Sometimes a student may end up disclosing to you by talking about it in that way. Another question that will come up from faculty and staff is how we run the testing center. So we ask students to go to our webpage and submit a testing accommodation request form about a week before an exam and about 2 weeks before finals, so that we have enough time to make sure that we have a seat in our testing center, we have a proctor, and we have enough time to make sure that the professor will get us the exam, as well as ensure that we are scheduling the exam to take place at a time where there are no other classes that the student is taking. Now, based on the time of the class, the student's schedule, as well as the hours of the testing center, it is not always possible for the exam to take place at the exact same time. While I would love to have this happen, it is simply not possible based on a student's packed schedule and the fact that there are classes that run through 10 o'clock at night. We always try to schedule the student for the exact same time as the rest of the class. If we can't, we try and have the exam either start or end during the original exam period. If we can't do that, then we try and schedule it on the same day. And this takes care of 90% to 95% of all of the exam requests. There are the occasion where a student's schedule is packed from 10 to 7 o'clock at night, and sometimes we may need to talk with the professor about allowing the student to take the exam the next day. When we get to those issues, we reach out to the professor and we find a solution that's workable for both the student and the professor. The Student Disability Services does not offer evaluative testing. It is our job to interpret the testing, but we do not have the resources or the personnel to give psychoeducational testing. However, the New School for Social Research does have a program called the New School Psychotherapy Research Program. And it is my understanding that they will begin again in the spring of 2019, and they will be able to offer low to no cost testing for new school students as part of a larger training program for doctoral candidates. So we refer a number of students over to this program, so we would encourage you to refer the students to us, and then we can refer the students to the program. If you have a question or concern, reach out to me personally or email or call Student Disability Services, and we'll get back to you as quickly as we can. Another resource that we're working on, which will go into more depth related to what we're talking about today, is the Faculty Staff Resource Guide. It is under construction right now. It is my goal to have it complete by the end of the academic year. Once it is complete and available, I will notify faculty and staff, and it will be posted for all to see on Canvas. We have a staff of the director, which is myself. We are in the process of hiring a coordinator, and we have a number of work study students who work in the office and also provide note-taking services. We're located in the University Center on the 4th floor of 63rd and 5th. Our phone number is 229-5626. You can see my email. You can see the Student Disability Services email. And again, if you have other questions that haven't been addressed in this talk, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm always happy to talk to faculty and staff so that we can work together to improve the outcomes for all students with disabilities.